Mary, Into the Muck, How Poker Changed My Life. Joe Turbessi with a bestseller on his hands, required reading at the University of Massachusetts in the health classes.
I can see why. I read it, the whole thing, this weekend. Thank you for giving it to me. And Joe is here with us today, Joe Turbessi.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Brad and Mary, for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
What a story, Joe.
Oh, my God. I can't believe it. Poker, and you broke the habit, but you're concerned about young men and women your age who are into poker now.
Well, for me, I saw this happen, and it just happened too easy. I came from a small town in Connecticut, Cornwall Bridge, Connecticut, went to high school out there. I've always had a loving, supportive family, so I didn't fit the stereotypical mold for a gambling addict, which is no real stereotype, but of course you follow those at some point or another. And for me, I was surrounded with such a great environment. I finished top 10 in my class, was quarterback of the football team, played basketball, played baseball. But when I went off to college at the University of Connecticut, everything was thrown at me, and it's just such an easy opportunity to do anything you want. And poker was so real and right in front of me at that time that when the general education classes that I was forced to take weren't captivating my interest, it seemed this was the easy way out, that I needed to be larger than life, or that exception that, a lot of young people like myself want to be. We want to get to the top, and we don't want to have to work there. And, I'm guilty of that, and, many others are. So,
And you had been introduced to it at such a young age through your granddad.
Yeah, my grandfather was a gambling addict, and when I was 7 years old, before I ever knew anything, and I'm not sure if he was a gambling addict at that time, he taught me how to play 7-card stud. So we played for nickels, dimes, quarters, and it became that bonding experience for my grandfather and I. So, one of the worst poker lessons I talk about that I got was win or lose, he always gave me the money. So that doesn't happen when you play at the poker tables at the casino. So for me, this whole transition from my grandfather was, we kind of lost touch a little bit when I moved from Pennsylvania to Connecticut. But he developed this extra problem with my grandmother that they got to the point where they lost everything.
Really?
Completely everything, from their house to their entire retirement money, that they were living in their car at the casinos at Atlantic City after they'd exhausted all of their comps. So after months of not eating right, not sleeping right, my grandmother was forced into almost like a rush dementia and Alzheimer's, and eventually spent the last couple of years of her life not knowing anyone or anything because of the stress she endured from it. My grandfather continued on even after my grandmother passed away, and when he still continued to gamble, and the problem started to become more real, and he still continued. We always joke that we knew when he got paid, and it wasn't a joke, but it was, he was gone and you couldn't get a hold of him because he was at the casino. So one of the last times I ever saw my grandfather was at the nursing home in Wilkes-Barre, Connecticut, once he put himself into his own sort of dementia. So I went in and saw him, and he was all frail and weak, like in his wheelchair, like a tiny little teenager. And, he had this goofy smile that he always had and this fisherman's cap, and I'll never forget that. So when we were there, he couldn't really eat, and that was one of the problems that he had. But, as he was coming, and it was like one of those last visit type things, but I saw a deck of cards in the corner of the room, and I brought it out, and I dealt out 7-card stud. And we came full circle at this moment because his eyes lit up, and it was that bittersweet moment of knowing that he was still there even though he wasn't, and that connection that we had to each other. But it really, it hurt to know that gambling meant that much to him.
But that was the familiarity that he knew. Now, I'm curious, Joe, when you were, let's say, a teenager, and obviously a very young kid at that point, did you assign or attach any negativity to your grandfather's addiction, or at that point you were still seeing it as somewhat glamorous?
Yeah, see, for me, when I was younger, I always remember, like, the Little Tykes table. I know everyone's seen those at their little kids. Like, me and my little sister would sit out next to the dining room table, and I would just hear my grandfather talk positively about the casino and that, jackpots, bells going, whistles, people over your shoulder, like, talking to you. People have asked me, do you think gambling addictions are hereditary? I think it's more environmental. So when he painted this picture as so glamorous around me, it wasn't like I was listening for it, but it kind of stuck in there. So, I never really acknowledged that he had a problem till, about my high school time, maybe a little bit afterward. But, I attribute the whole gambling addict thing, especially in young people, very similar to the invincibility factor that we talk about in teenagers, where
And we can all relate to that.
Yeah, I can drive
universal.
as fast as I want. I can do as many drugs as I want. Nothing's going to happen to me.
That's right.
With gambling, I consider it a young ego. It doesn't matter what happened to you. I can still make it. You couldn't make it, but I can. And, that's what I feel like happened to me.
We're going to take a break right now. We're speaking with Joe Turbessi, author of Into the Muck. He's in studio talking about gambling, talking about its effect, its impact on young people, though it certainly affects everyone, doesn't it?
Wait until members of our radio audience that come to the luncheon on June 6th meet him. They're going to be overwhelmed. He
has a great voice for radio, though, doesn't he? I'm just hearing on top of everything else.
But he's a great speaker. We got some more stories that we're going to tell when we come back. Brad Davis, Mary Jones, a very special guest, Joe Turbessi, Into the Muck, how poker changed my life. Now, I just want to reiterate something that I have learned, and I'm learning more and more every day, that women never, ever forget. You can say something to them 5 minutes ago, and next year they will remind you what you said 5 minutes ago. Now, I made the comment this morning when I first saw Mary. She looks a little nippy this morning.
Well, you said snippy.
Or snippy. I said snippy. She looks a little snippy this morning.
Nippy makes about as much sense.
I said snippy.
But you said snippy.
Snippy.
Well, yes, and I wasn't...
And guess what? She's already on the web looking up just exactly what it means.
I was curious because you look snippy. I had no idea. You know what snippy means. I mean, according to the dictionary, it means short-tempered, snappish, unduly brief, curt, putting on airs. I walked in the room, had not opened my mouth, and you said I looked all of those things.
Just a look coming across the hall and everything. It was just kind of a look. I said, gosh, she looks a little snippy this morning.
I think we should leave now.
but anyway, of course,
so yes, you said it an hour ago, and yes, a year from now, I am going to remember that comment. Don't even think I'm going to forget it. So you're absolutely right about that.
The ladies that you saw this weekend.
And you're making me snippy.
The ladies that you saw this weekend.
He's pointing.
That said, what did you put it? What you put into me?
A thorn in your side.
There you go.
But they meant it a good thing.